All right, so are you ready to kind of,
I am ready.
yeah, let's dive into Nietzsche. We're tackling the gay science today.
Oh, yeah, this is a good one.
I know, I'm really excited about this one.
Buckle up.
Yeah, definitely buckle up. Because Nietzsche's going to throw some curveballs. This is not a passive read.
No,
This is an active read.
it's a workout for the brain
Yeah,
and the soul.
and the soul, exactly. So if you're, into just kind of like, really easily digestible kind of surface level philosophy, this is not the book for you.
Right.
You really gotta dig deep with this one.
So, I mean, that's what we do here at the Deep Dive.
That's what we do. This is the deep dive, and we're going deep. So we are looking at The Gay Science by Friedrich Nietzsche. It was written, or published rather, in 1882. And then there was a significantly expanded second edition in 1887. It's a collection of aphorisms and poems.
Oh, and songs, too.
Yeah, right? There's a whole section of songs.
Yeah, it's
Really-
crazy. It's like a musical interlude.
It's awesome. And then, yeah, it explores all these different themes like morality and religion and art knowledge and just the human condition in general. But what's really interesting about this book is that Nietzsche kind of uses this concept of Gaia Scienza. I think I'm pronouncing that right.
You are.
Which is the art of the night poets.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, it's this idea that he's not just like presenting dry philosophical arguments.
Yo.
He's like infusing this like playful, like almost rebellious energy.
Yeah, almost like a joyful rebellion against the way that we normally think about things.
Yeah, it's like he's saying, let's dismantle traditional morality, but let's do it with a song and a dance.
Yeah, exactly. And that comes through in the title itself.
Right.
The Gay Science.
Right.
It's not about being happy-go-lucky.
Yeah.
It's about this kind of defiant joy.
Yeah, it's like a celebration of life in the face of
hardship, in the face of uncertainty.
Yeah, and that's something that I think is really unique to Nietzsche.
Well, I mean, I think you find it in other philosophers too, but he really brings it to the forefront.
He's not afraid to be playful.
Mm-hmm.
And so, one of the things that I love about this book is that it's not like some stuffy lecture, right?
Yeah.
It feels dangerous and exciting. And like I said, it's surprisingly funny at times.
Yeah.
But it's also packed with these like mind-blowing insights, like the way that he dismantles our ideas about good and evil.
Oh, totally.
Like he completely flips the script on us.
He does.
He's like, you think you know what's good and what's bad.
Think again.
Think again. And he argues that what we call evil can actually be a necessary ingredient for growth.
It's like fertilizer.
Like fertilizer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he compares it to a tree needing storms to grow tall.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
It is a great analogy.
Because if you think about a tree that's always sheltered, always protected, it might seem fine on the surface, but its roots would be weak. And then the first strong wind could topple it.
Right. It just wouldn't be able to withstand.
It's brittle.
Yeah, it would be brittle. It's in facing those storms that the tree becomes resilient.
It develops a deep taproot.
Yeah, it's got to like dig deep.
Yeah.
So applying that to us, I mean, are we saying that if we avoid all hardship, all discomfort, we're actually weakening ourselves?
That's what Nietzsche's suggesting.
Yeah.
He's challenging us to rethink our ideas about comfort and ease.
Wow.
He's saying maybe it's in facing our fears, our challenges, even our pain, that we truly become strong.
This is a pretty radical way of looking at things.
I guess. I mean,
It's not easy,
it's not easy, no.
but it's powerful.
It is powerful.
Like he's saying, don't shy away from the darkness.
Embrace it.
Focus on
Grapple
it.
with it.
See what emerges on the other side.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is where I get a little tripped up, because then he introduces this idea that like the way we label things actually shapes our reality more than what those things actually are. It feels almost like he's saying we should give up on truth.
Will not give up on truth,
Yeah.
but rather understand how truth is constructed. You see, Nietzsche argues that names, estimations, probabilities, these are the building blocks of our reality. We're constantly interpreting, categorizing, assigning meaning to the world around us.
Okay.
So he's not saying that truth is irrelevant,
Right.
but he is saying that we need to be aware of how we're creating it.
So it's like if we want to change the world, we have to change the way we talk about it.
Yeah.
Change the stories we tell ourselves.
Precisely.
Wow.
Nietzsche believed that to destroy old realities, we have to create new ones. It's about becoming aware of the narratives that shape our lives and then consciously choosing to rewrite them.
Okay, so give me an example of that.
Okay, imagine you've been telling yourself a story about being powerless in a certain situation.
Okay, yeah.
Nietzsche would say, what if you wrote a new story?
Okay.
One where you're the hero, where you have agency and the ability to change the outcome.
Wow.
It's a powerful call to action, especially for anyone who feels stuck.
That is powerful. Yeah. Okay, so this is all making me rethink like the whole concept of suffering, because Nietzsche compares the Stoic and Epicurean approaches to life.
Right.
The Stoic who endures everything and the Epicurean who carefully curates their experiences. It's like two completely opposite ways of dealing with life's inevitable hardships.
Wait,
right?
absolutely.
So,
And Nietzsche saw value in both approaches, but he emphasizes self-knowledge as the key.
okay.
The Stoic might teach us resilience, the ability to withstand anything.
Right.
The Epicurean reminds us to be selective,
Okay.
to curate experiences that nourish us.
Okay, so it's about balance.
In a way.
Yeah.
But the real question is, what works for you? What are your strengths, your weaknesses, your needs?
Okay.
Knowing yourself is the first step to navigating suffering in a way that leads to growth rather than just endurance.
Right. It's not just about getting through it. It's about like,
It's about thriving.
yeah, thriving.
Yeah.
And this is where I think it gets really personal. Because Nietzsche himself struggled with chronic illness throughout his life. You know, he wasn't just theorizing about suffering, he was living it. So when he talks about the art of suffering well, it's not just an abstract concept. It's something he had to figure out for himself.
Absolutely. He was walking the walk.
Yeah.
And, you know, that leads us to one of the most explosive ideas in the gay science, and maybe in all of philosophy, the death of God.
Yeah, I was wondering when we were going to get to that. Okay, so that's the one that tends to send shockwaves through the culture. It's not like he's announcing a literal death, right?
Right.
It's something else.
He's actually diagnosing a cultural shift,
Okay.
the decline of religious belief as the unquestioned foundation of meaning and morality.
Right.
He saw it happening all around him, this growing sense that the old answers no longer satisfied.
Yeah. So if God is dead then, what does it even mean for us? Are we just adrift in a meaningless void?
That's the question Nietzsche throws at us. And he suggests that the death of God could lead to nihilism, to a sense that nothing matters.
Right.
But he also sees it as an opportunity, a chance to create our own values, our own meaning, unconstrained by the dictates of tradition.
Wow.
It's both terrifying and exhilarating.
It is. I mean, that's a lot of responsibility.
It is.
To be like, okay, well, there's no God, so now I have to figure out everything for myself.
Yeah. What does it mean to be human in a world without God?
Right.
That's the question.
Yeah. Okay, so he calls one potential response Dionysian pessimism. And I got to admit, that phrase sounds a bit intimidating. What does it even mean to be a Dionysian pessimist?
It's about embracing the chaos of existence, the inherent suffering that's part of being alive, without seeking solace in easy answers or otherworldly hopes. Think of the Greek god Dionysus, the god of wine ecstasy, and also madness and destruction.
Right.
It's that raw, untamed energy that Nietzsche's pointing to.
So it's like, instead of clinging to the old certainties, the old comforts,
Yeah.
we find a way to say yes to life, even the parts that are painful, confusing, even tragic.
It's about finding a way to dance on the edge of the abyss, to laugh in the face of absurdity, and to create beauty even in the midst of suffering.
That sounds intense.
It is. It's a radical, almost defiant way of being in the world.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. And it's a stark contrast to the way that, like, priests and philosophers have traditionally approached life, wouldn't you say?
Totally.
Yeah.
Nietzsche saw a fundamental tension between those who seek solace in faith
Okay.
and those who embrace questioning and uncertainty.
Okay.
The priest offers comfort, certainty, a prepackaged meaning system.
Right.
The philosopher, on the other hand, is constantly probing, questioning, and often unsettling the status quo.
Yeah. So the philosopher is more like a rebel, a
Yeah.
truth seeker who's willing to challenge everything, even the most sacred beliefs.
You could say that.
Yeah.
And Nietzsche saw this as a necessary role, even a heroic one.
Wow.
He believed that facing uncomfortable truths, even those that might shake us to our core, is essential for individual and societal growth.
Yeah. That makes me think about how he saw art as a way of coping with the realization that life is inherently untrue,
Ah, yes.
that our perceptions and knowledge are always limited, always filtered through our own subjective lenses.
Art allows us to embrace appearance, to find beauty and meaning in the face of a reality that is ultimately unknowable. It's
Wow.
like we're all living in this grand play,
Okay.
and art gives us permission to revel in the costumes, the sets, the dramatic lighting, even if we know it's not real in some ultimate sense.
So for anyone who finds like solace and inspiration in art, Nietzsche's saying it's not just a frivolous pastime.
Yeah.
It's a way of confronting the inherent untruth of existence and
Ah.
finding a way to create beauty and meaning within it.
Exactly.
Right.
It's a way of saying yes to life, even with all its illusions, its contradictions, its inherent mysteries.
It's beautiful.
It is. It's a way of being a gay scientist,
Mhm.
embracing the joy of discovery, even when those discoveries challenge everything we thought we knew.
Yeah. And speaking of challenging discoveries, we can't wrap up this part of our deep dive without at least mentioning eternal recurrence
Oh, yes.
and the will to power.
Yeah.
Two of Nietzsche's most, thought-provoking,
Yeah.
and let's be honest, somewhat terrifying ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Are you ready to kind of go there?
I think so.
All right.
Let's see where this takes us.
All right.
Yeah. So we left off talking about eternal recurrence, this idea that everything that's happened will happen again and again, infinitely.
Right. And I'm still kind of reeling from that concept.
It's a big one.
It is a big one.
So imagine every joy, every sorrow, every choice replaying endlessly. Does that thought fill you with dread or exhilaration?
Honestly, it's a bit of both, I think. I mean, on the one hand, it feels incredibly daunting, like, oh my gosh, I have to do all this again. But then on the other hand, it makes you realize that every moment, every decision has this cosmic weight to it, you know?
Yeah, that's exactly the point Nietzsche was trying to make.
Okay.
He wasn't necessarily saying that eternal recurrence is a literal truth.
Okay.
It's more of a thought experiment.
Right.
A way of saying, hey, if you had to live your life over and over again, would you change anything?
Right.
Would you make different choices? Would you savor certain moments more
Yeah.
intensely?
Oh.
Yeah.
It's like a radical form of self-accountability.
Exactly.
It's not about judgment from some external authority.
Yeah.
It's about asking yourself, am I living a life that I would choose to repeat with all its joys and sorrows?
That's the question.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this idea of eternal recurrence, it seems so deeply connected to his concept of the will to power,
Oh, absolutely.
which we haven't really talked about yet.
Right.
So can you kind of unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, so Nietzsche saw the will to power as this fundamental force driving all of life.
Okay.
And not just in a domineering sense,
Right.
but as this striving for growth, for expansion, for overcoming limitations.
Okay.
It's the force that pushes us to learn, to create, to evolve.
So it's like this internal drive that we all have to
Ah.
kind of reach our full potential.
In a way.
Yeah.
But it's not always a pretty process.
Right, because growth can be painful.
Exactly. It involves struggle and challenge and sometimes even destruction.
Right.
But through that destruction, something new can emerge. Something stronger, more resilient, more beautiful.
So in the context of eternal recurrence, then the will to power is almost like this internal compass that guides us toward a life we would want to live again and again.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah, it's about aligning our actions with our deepest desires and values, knowing that those choices will echo through eternity.
Exactly. It's about becoming the authors of our own lives.
Right.
Not just passive characters swept along by fate.
And this takes us back to Nietzsche's critique of honesty. Not honesty in the sense of telling the truth to other people, but honesty with ourselves.
Right.
So I'm a little confused here, because earlier we were talking about how Nietzsche saw this need for art and illusion to kind of help us cope with the harshness of reality. So is he saying that we should lie to ourselves?
Well, not quite. He's suggesting that absolute unfiltered self-knowledge can be a burden, even a danger. Imagine staring into a mirror. That reflects every flaw, every insecurity with brutal honesty. It could be paralyzing.
Oh yeah, I can see that. It'd be hard to function.
Right.
So he's saying that we need a little bit of self-deception.
Maybe not deception, but a kind of selective focus.
Okay.
He believed that we need narratives, even myths, to help us make sense of the world and our place in it.
Go.
And art provides those narratives, those myths, those glimpses of beauty and meaning that allow us to keep going, even when reality is tough.
That makes me think about how often we hear about the importance of finding your truth. But what if truth is multifaceted, even contradictory?
Exactly.
What if embracing the untruth of art actually allows us to access a deeper, more nuanced kind of truth?
I love that.
Yeah.
Nietzsche challenges us to think beyond simplistic binaries of truth and falsehood. He suggests that art, with its embrace of ambiguity and imagination, can actually help us to see the world and ourselves more fully.
Okay.
It's like he's saying, don't be afraid to play with perspectives, to experiment with different interpretations.
Right.
You might discover something surprising, even liberating about yourself.
That's awesome. Okay, so this is making me rethink everything we've been talking about morality, about good and evil. Because if truth is this fluid, ever-shifting thing, then maybe our ideas about right and wrong need to be more flexible too.
You're getting it.
Okay.
Nietzsche challenges us to move beyond rigid moral codes, beyond the dictates of tradition and dogma.
Okay.
He's asking us to become creators of our own values, our own ethics, based on a deep understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
So instead of just blindly following rules that were handed down to us, we have to figure out what's right and wrong for ourselves.
In essence, yes.
Wow, that's a lot of pressure.
It is.
It's like he's giving us permission to break the rules, to challenge the status quo, to forge our own path. But it's also a huge responsibility. Because if there's no external authority to tell us what's right and wrong, then we have to figure it out for ourselves.
And that's where his idea of the sovereign individual comes in.
Right.
It's not about egotism or recklessness.
Yeah.
It's about taking ownership of our choices, our actions, and ultimately our destinies.
So it's like radical self-responsibility.
You could say that.
Yeah.
It's about becoming the artists of our own lives.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so this all takes us back to that question of suffering. If we're each responsible for creating our own meaning and our own values, how do we do that in a world that's full of pain and loss and disappointment?
Well, Nietzsche reminds us that suffering is an inevitable part of the human experience.
Okay.
It's what we do with that suffering that matters.
Right.
Do we let it crush us, or do we use it as fuel for growth, for transformation?
So it's not about avoiding suffering. It's about learning how to suffer well.
Exactly.
Okay.
He talked about two types of sufferers, those who are overflowing with life and those who are impoverished in life.
Okay, so what's the difference?
Well, it's almost like some people have a greater capacity for experiencing both joy and pain. They're more alive, more attuned to the world around them.
Okay.
And Nietzsche believed that those who are overflowing with life, those who embrace the Dionysian spirit, are better equipped to handle suffering.
Okay.
They have this almost inexhaustible well of vitality, this ability to find beauty and meaning even in the darkest moments.
So it's not about avoiding pain or seeking constant pleasure. It's about cultivating this inner strength, this resilience that allows us to meet life on its own terms with all its challenges and triumphs.
You're getting it.
Okay.
It's about becoming what Nietzsche called amor fati,
Amor fati.
the lover of fate,
Wow.
embracing everything that life throws at you,
Okay.
the good, the bad, and the ugly.
I like that. The lover of fate.
Yeah, it's a powerful concept.
It is.
And Nietzsche believed that this strength, this amor fati, is cultivated through self-knowledge, through the willingness to confront our own shadows, our own limitations,
Right.
and to emerge stronger on the other side.
So it's like this ongoing process of self-discovery and growth.
Exactly.
Right.
It's a process of continual self-overcoming,
Okay.
of pushing ourselves beyond our comfort zones and embracing the unknown.
So it's not about arriving at some final destination. It's about the journey itself.
The journey is the destination.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so he even suggests that we need to find our own seventh solitude.
Ah, yeah.
This space where we can connect with our deepest selves, free from the distractions and expectations of the world.
It's almost like a spiritual retreat.
Right.
But it's not about escaping reality. It's
Yeah.
about going deeper into it, into ourselves.
So how do we do that?
Yeah.
How do we find our seventh solitude?
Well, there's no one-size-fits-all answer,
Okay.
but it might involve spending time in nature,
Okay.
engaging in creative pursuits, meditating, journaling,
Right.
anything that helps you to quiet the noise of the world.
Okay.
Tune into the whispers of your own soul.
And this solitude isn't about isolation or withdrawal from the world, right?
No.
It's about cultivating a strong and independent spirit. A spirit that can withstand the pressures of conformity and the distractions of everyday life.
Exactly.
Okay, so how does this all relate to relationships? If we're all striving to become these sovereign individuals, is there even space for love, for connection, for community?
That's a great question. And it leads us into one of Nietzsche's more provocative and often misunderstood areas of thought, his views on men and women.
Okay.
He had some pretty radical things to say about love relationships and the differences between the sexes.
Yeah, and I've heard that some of his ideas on this can be pretty controversial.
They can be, but
Yeah.
I think it's important to engage with them even if we ultimately disagree.
Okay.
So Nietzsche believed that men and women have fundamentally different approaches to love. He suggested that women tend to see love as a matter of total devotion, a kind of surrender to the beloved.
Okay. And for men?
He argued that men experience love more as a form of conquest possession, even self-affirmation.
Okay, so they're coming at it from completely different angles.
In a way, yes.
Wow.
And he's not saying one is better than the other.
Right.
He's simply observing that these different approaches can lead to misunderstandings, conflicts, and even heartbreak.
Right. So it's like they're speaking different languages when it comes to love. Their
Yes.
expectations and desires are coming from different places.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Nietzsche suggests that bridging those differences requires a deep level of self-awareness and communication.
Okay.
It's about understanding your own needs and desires,
Right.
as well as the needs and desires of your partner,
Right.
and finding a way to meet somewhere in the middle.
So it's not about like trying to change the other person. It's about like understanding and accepting them for who they are.
Exactly. And recognizing that their differences can actually complement and enrich the relationship.
That's interesting. So this makes me think about how often we hear about the battle of the sexes. Are men and women really from different planets? Or are we just like not communicating effectively?
Nietzsche might say there's a bit of truth to both perspectives.
Okay.
He believed that men and women are inherently different,
Right.
but he also recognized the importance of understanding and bridging those differences.
So it's not about saying one perspective is right and the other is wrong. It's more about recognizing that men and women approach love and relationships with different sets of needs, desires, and expectations.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And Nietzsche believed that understanding those differences is key to creating more fulfilling and authentic relationships.
Okay.
It's about recognizing the other's individuality, their unique strengths and weaknesses, and appreciating how those differences can complement and enrich the relationship.
And this all ties back to Nietzsche's emphasis on self-knowledge. Because if we don't understand ourselves, our own needs and desires, then how can we possibly hope to understand others, let alone build meaningful relationships with them?
You've hit on a crucial point.
Yeah.
Nietzsche believed that self-knowledge is the foundation for all genuine growth and understanding. It's only by looking inward, by examining our own motivations and desires, that we can begin to make sense of the world around us and our place within it.
So in a way, he's saying that the journey to finding love, to building meaningful connections, begins with a journey inward, a journey of self-discovery.
Exactly. It's about cultivating that seventh solitude.
Right.
That space where we can connect with our deepest selves, our authentic desires.
Right.
And from that place of self-understanding, reach out to others with genuine empathy and compassion.
Yeah.
It's a challenging path,
Okay.
but ultimately a rewarding one.
It is. Okay, so as we continue our exploration of the gay science, I'm really curious to see how all of these ideas that we've been talking about, self-knowledge, suffering the will to power, how they all play out in the context of his most controversial concept, the death of God. Are you ready to kind of delve into that abyss?
I think so.
Okay.
Let's confront the shadows and see what truths emerge.
All right, so we're back, and I got to say I'm both excited and a little apprehensive to dive into this next topic.
Yeah, I get that.
We've been kind of dancing around it, but it's time to confront the elephant in the room, or maybe the God-shaped hole in the room.
Right, the death of God.
Yeah, exactly.
One of Nietzsche's most provocative and often misunderstood ideas.
It's a doozy for sure.
And it's not a theological statement. It's a
Wow.
cultural diagnosis.
Okay, so just to be clear, he wasn't like literally saying that there was a God who suddenly like poofed out of existence.
No, not at all.
He was talking about something much bigger.
Right. He was observing a shift in consciousness, a decline in the unquestioning belief in a God that had defined Western civilization for centuries.
Okay, so it was like the foundation of our belief systems was crumbling.
Exactly. He saw the old foundations crumbling, the moral codes, the meaning systems, the whole edifice of belief that had provided a sense of stability and purpose for generations.
Yeah, and this was happening in the late 19th century, right?
Right. A time of rapid scientific and technological advancement, social upheaval, growing skepticism toward traditional authority.
It's almost like the world was going through a collective identity crisis.
Precisely, it was a time of immense change and uncertainty, and Nietzsche was one of the first to recognize the profound implications of this shift.
So he saw this coming.
In a way, yes, he saw the writing on the wall.
And he saw both the dangers and the possibilities, right?
Absolutely. On the one hand, he feared that the death of God would lead to nihilism, to a sense of meaninglessness and despair.
Right, like if there's no God, then what's the point of anything?
Yeah. Exactly. But on the other hand, he saw it as an opportunity for a radical revaluation of values, a chance for humanity to create its own meaning and purpose, unconstrained by the dictates of tradition.
Okay, so it's like we're standing at a fork in the road.
Okay, I like that analogy.
One path leads to this like nihilistic abyss.
Right. The abyss of meaninglessness.
Yeah, where nothing matters.
Right.
But the other path, where does that lead?
That's the question Nietzsche poses to us.
Yeah.
He doesn't offer a blueprint, a step-by-step guide to navigating this new world without God.
Right.
He was more interested in provoking us to think for ourselves, to grapple with the challenges and possibilities of this new era.
So he's not giving us the answers.
No, he's giving us a question.
Wow.
Yeah.
But he did offer some clues, right?
He did. He gave us some hints about what a life beyond traditional morality might look like.
Okay, so like what kind of hints?
Well, one of those hints is this idea of the Dionysian pessimist.
Right, and that's a phrase that always kind of throws me off.
I know it sounds almost paradoxical.
It does, because how can you be both a pessimist and embrace the spirit of Dionysus, the god of wine and ecstasy and celebration?
Right. Well, it's about recognizing the inherent suffering and chaos of existence, the fact that life is often messy, painful, and unpredictable.
Okay.
But instead of shying away from those difficult truths, the Dionysian pessimist embraces them, even finds a kind of joy in confronting the abyss.
So it's like a defiant affirmation of life.
Exactly.
It's like saying, yeah, life is hard, but I'm going to dance with it anyway.
I love that. Yeah, it's about finding a way to affirm life in all its complexity and intensity without seeking solace in easy answers or otherworldly hoax.
It's about facing the void and saying, I will create my own meaning. I will find my own joy.
You got it.
That's powerful.
It is.
And it takes courage.
It does. It takes a certain kind of courage, a willingness to stand alone, to face the unknown, without the crutch of traditional belief systems.
That's what Nietzsche called the sovereign individual, right?
Yep. Exactly. The sovereign individual is someone who has thrown off the shackles of conventional morality, someone who creates their own values and lives according to their own internal compass.
And this isn't about being selfish or egotistical, is it?
No, not at all. The sovereign individual isn't rebelling for the sake of rebellion. They're seeking a more authentic way of being in the world, a way that aligns with their deepest desires and values.
Okay, so it's about being true to yourself.
Yeah, you could say that.
And this idea of the sovereign individual, it seems really closely tied to that concept of self-overcoming.
Oh, absolutely.
This continual process of pushing ourselves beyond our limitations, confronting our fears, and becoming more than we were before.
Right. For Nietzsche, self-overcoming wasn't about achieving some fixed state of perfection. It was an ongoing process, a lifelong journey of growth and transformation.
So it's like always striving to be better.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that we are not static beings, but dynamic, ever-evolving creatures capable of incredible change and growth.
And this makes me think about his idea of eternal recurrence. Because if we knew we had to live our lives over and over again,
Right.
wouldn't that motivate us to make choices that would lead to growth, to joy, to a life worth repeating?
Absolutely. Eternal recurrence is a powerful thought experiment that challenges us to examine our choices, our values, our actions.
That's like a cosmic mirror.
Yeah, it forces us to ask ourselves, am I living a life that I would choose to live again, or am I sleepwalking through my existence making choices out of fear, habit, or conformity?
Wow.
Yeah.
And this ties back into the will to power, doesn't it?
It does. It's not just about dominating others. It's about harnessing that inner drive to grow, to create, to expand our horizons, and to become more fully ourselves.
So it's about becoming the best version of ourselves.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we have the power to shape our own destinies, to create meaning and purpose in a world that may seem inherently meaningless.
Yeah.
It's about embracing the challenge of living in a world without God, without easy answers, and finding a way to dance on the edge of the abyss, to create beauty in the face of chaos, and to live a life that is truly our own.
So Nietzsche may have declared that God is dead, but he wasn't advocating for despair or nihilism.
No, not at all.
He was challenging us to rise to the occasion, to become the creators of our own meaning, the artists of our own lives.
Right. And that's a message that resonates even more powerfully today in a world that often feels increasingly fragmented, uncertain, and in search of new sources of meaning and purpose.
It's like he was ahead of his time.
In many ways, he was.
Yeah.
He was a philosopher who dared us to embrace our freedom, to confront our fears, and to live dangerously, not recklessly, but with a fierce passion and a commitment to becoming the best versions of ourselves.
And maybe in that process of self-creation, we might even discover a new kind of spirituality.
Yeah, maybe
A
so.
way of connecting with something larger than ourselves.
Not through dogma or blind faith,
Right.
but through a deep and joyful affirmation of life in all its messy, glorious complexity.
That's a beautiful thought.
It is.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive into the gay science. I want to thank you for guiding us through Nietzsche's challenging and often exhilarating ideas.
It's been my pleasure.
It really has been a journey of discovery, not just about Nietzsche's philosophy, but about ourselves, our place in the world, and the infinite possibilities that lie before us.
I agree.
So to our listeners out there, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it thought-provoking and maybe even a little bit life-changing. And we encourage you to continue exploring Nietzsche's work on your own, because as Nietzsche himself might say, the journey is the destination. And the path to self-discovery is paved with questions, challenges, and the courage to embrace the unknown.
Well said.
Until next time, dear listeners, keep questioning, keep creating, and keep living dangerously.